Thank you for joining, everyone. We are going to have some time for questions and answers at the end, and we can try to answer as many questions as possible during as well. If you do have a question, if you wouldn't mind putting it into the Q&A section, if you can look down below at the bottom of Zoom. Most of you have probably used Q&A before, but if you click on that, put in your question, and we will answer that as soon as we can. Some we may answer just through text, and others will try to answer live on the webinar. So we are recording, and it is after 7 o'clock, so we will get started. Thank you all for joining tonight. And we are here with special Dr. Kevin Butterfield out of the Indianapolis area, a specialist in neurofeedback about rewiring after injury, because many of you and Dr. Kevin has dealt with as well a lot of injuries. There's a lot of different ways that you can get injuries through chemical nature, but also through direct physical, like a concussion type of thing, TBIs and such. So I will let Dr. Kevin take over from here, and we're going to have a couple of questions along the way. But please don't hesitate to put in your questions as we move along today, and or if you just want to send a message into the chat button, and we will answer those as quickly as possible. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
Are you going to read this, or are we going to read this on our own?
So we can read this on our own. Basically we're not here to diagnose, treat, or cure anything, and you have to talk to your medical provider for basically what you need to talk to your medical provider about. How's that?
That sounds beautiful.
All right, thank you.
All right, so this is our leadership team. I'll start off with myself. I'm a 91 Palmer West grad, done chiropractic for a long time. I entered into neurofeedback 25 plus years ago, um, because I wanted to do something else besides from the neck down to help my patients that I see. So I treat kids from like 2 years old up to adults with Alzheimer's and dementia, and everybody in between. And I do a lot of professional sports and motorsports for concussion detection and mitigation and peak performance brain training. That's what I do now. And Seth, go ahead and introduce yourself.
So, yes, I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. I was board certified in holistic nutrition. I was with a large manufacturer. Many of you may have known them, Standard Process, that supports alternative healthcare practitioners across the country. One of the largest, it is the largest whole food supplement company. I was with them for 12 years, and I left them and really started and joined with Dr. Kevin to help with bringing that conversation of, okay, neurofeedback. I knew a lot about it, or a little bit about it. I guess I know a lot more about it now, but I understood what it could help and how it was measuring the electrical activity. But I wanted to understand how, from a metabolic standpoint, from a nutritional and supplement standpoint, how can we actually influence the brain? And what I've learned is the neurofeedback of how it influences brain energy and how it influences the individual's motivation, clarity of thought, focus. That actually helps with them being more compliant with the metabolic recommendations, lifestyle recommendations, to actually combine together to be more synergistic and helpful. So that's really what my perspective is coming in, is trying to kind of put those two together with the metabolic system and with the brain and electrical activity that we can measure with the QEEG to help influence to get patients even better results. That's my kind of focus there. And then Dan Court, who is with us today, I believe, but he's in as a participant. But his background has been, he was one of my largest Standard Process accounts when I was with Standard Process, has an extensive background with nutrition, helping patients at a large scale, and has done that very successfully, still continues to do that very successfully, does all remote practice at the moment. But his experience in the past with over three different companies that he was able to sell to either a NASDAQ or a New York Stock Exchange company was very successful. We're bringing this together because our goal as a team with the others that we do work with on our team is really to take neurofeedback across the country and make it much more well known because of the impacts we can have on the general population and the demand that is out there once people are aware of how we can influence the brain and how we can influence individuals to make better choices, to be more focused. that is, we're getting extremely, very positive results from patients and from practitioners alike. So we're looking to do this on scale and really trying to expand the notoriety and the availability of neurofeedback clinics across the country. So as together, we have a really solid team to really help make that happen. So move on.
Okay, now we've all seen these patients before. Ones that came in either from a personal injury, auto accident, sports injury, slip and fall. They had a concussion. We've done all the care we can give them, chiropractic, nutrition, physical therapy, everything, and they seem better on the outside, but they're not really better. They're still got they're not where they were before their injury, and you know how they were before because they were your patients, for the most part. They are they're at a loss themselves. I mean, back in the day when we used to do concussion detection, it consisted of, how many fingers am I holding up and what's your name? If you pass that diagnostic test, they say shake it off, get back in the game. And the mitigation part was, don't watch TV, stay away from the bright lights or bright sounds. That's the way it was back in the day. That's not the way it should be now. They say that concussions go away. They never do. They just leave us different. And we'll tell you why that is. Um, yeah, like all the concussion that you have. I mean, if they get an MRI or CAT scan, those always come back for the most part normal. The best time to get a CAT scan or MRI if you have like a head injury is just to rule out a fracture or a bleeder. Other than that, they're not sensitive enough to pick up what electronically is going on in the brain. And that can lead to the brain fog, the cognitive fatigue, trouble sleeping, short fuse, anger, depression, and things like that. So obviously the question is, what if the barrier isn't a structural damage, but a functional dysregulation in the brain? That's what we're going to find out today. And that's usually where we find the problems. The reticular activating system, that's your brain's arousal system. That's what a gate in your brain stem where all of the sensory input goes through. You have to close the gate. You can't leave it open, or then you flood the brain with a bunch of, oversensory stuff that puts the patients in a fight or flight status, overstimulated. The networks are going crazy in his brain. That's the stuff that tends to wean off over time. You will adapt to that, but the gate is still open. So that's a problem. So then everything floods up to the thalamic gate, and that is also open, and we'll go over that in a second. But the brain injury that you get with a concussion, mild concussion, you don't have to be knocked out to get a concussion, but it just changes the electronics in your brain. And that can be a big problem, leading to a lot of network timing issues, the stress response dysregulation, and the sleep-wake disruption, the cognitive load tolerance. I mean, it's like, if you go in your garage and you hit your fuse box with a sledgehammer, the lights flicker on the inside of the house, they're still working, but they're not working as good as they should be working. So this is stuff that lingers, that we don't need to linger. This is the thalamic filtering and sensory overwhelm. This is that gate that's open and it's getting a lot of sensory information up to the brain and the cortex. Your brain cannot handle and process all that information at once, but it's like always there. So you're in chronic sensory overload. This is a big thing. I mean, if you can see all this data from brain map, you can see where the problems are coming from as far as where the brain is overworking or underworking, and you can actually mitigate that and change that to quote, scrub that concussion out. I think that is something you should definitely do. All right, Seth, you take it over here from here?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so the tissue repair does not mean that the electronic regulation in your brain is restored. They're two different things. So obviously the swelling and the bleeding from a concussion, if it's bad enough, will resolve itself over time. But you're still left with the flickering lights inside the house, right? Because you didn't go address the fuse box. You still have a lot of problems in the brain. And that can be from mild to profound. People don't usually associate that with a concussion down the road. Well, hey, the lights don't bother me anymore. Sounds don't bother me anymore. but we can actually pinpoint with a brain map if you've had a concussion, and we can also say how bad it is. It won't tell us how many or when you had them, but it'll tell us with high probability that you just had one. And once you have all that information and you can see it and you can measure it, you can change it, get it back to where it should be.
All right, thank you. So before I get started on my part, I just wanted to, and I apologize that the chat is disabled. That's probably a setting on the setup of this, but I have a question that I want to just ask everybody. It's going to be a poll that's going to launch right now, and it is popping up on your side. I just wanted to see if everyone could just, put in an answer right now, just so we can kind of get a gauge and understanding of where everybody's coming from of how often do you believe brain regulation plays a role in the symptoms your patients present with? So if you could just um, respond real quickly and then we can move on. I appreciate it. Thank you. I got some responses coming in and I'll end it in just one more second. All right, end poll. All right. So it looks like 40%, almost every case, the brain is a major driver, 40% frequently, but I do not currently measure it directly, and then 20% occasionally, depending on the condition. So I thank you. I appreciate everybody
Yeah, thanks for that.
for responding to that. So that's part of the major part of today is talking about the diagnostic blind spot. I'm going to get into some of the imaging that's available for neuroimaging, which most of you are all aware of, but just get a little to more detail of why they may be missing. There's MRIs and CTs that most people go to, but there is a an ongoing dysfunction that the patients are experiencing, and everything's showing up normal. But why is that? So, because the traditional imaging cannot detect timing disruptions, connectivity breakdowns, there's instability of the ability to be able to communicate from one hemisphere to the other. There's bottlenecks that occurs, especially if there's a fight or flight overflow that Dr. Kevin was talking about. And, the injury is more of like a functional impact. It's not structural from a structural of what we can actually see right now with today's imaging limitations that are there, even though they are very advanced, but there is still some limitations because of the nature of how small these injuries can be and how that influences the brain. All right, so we're going to cover CT, MRI, functional MRI, PET, and MEG and QEG here. So just kind of go over like the comparison criteria, what's measured, the risks, some of the resolution problems. The temporal resolution is, really of the timing of things on how that's measuring because there's most of these that are like the MRI, functional MRI, they're measured off of hemodynamics. The study of hemodynamics is the measure of how quickly the blood is moving, and that's how it's kind of picking up. It's a magnetism of the oxygen within the blood. And kind of what is the assessment for? So just there's different reasons of why you would get some of these different assessments, and many of them all come down to cost and availability. So if you want to move to the next. For our CT, the computerized tomography, that's a very good option for if there is structural damage to the hard tissue. It's poor on soft tissue contrast, has low sensitivity, and it can't really detect some mild TBIs, which most cases of TBIs that are occurring in concussions, especially in sports today, they're more on the mild end where it may not be enough to, get a CT scan or even maybe an MRI even, but that's still going to be some impact that's going to be affecting them long term. So can't measure that brain function and connectivity, and it misses a microscopic neural damage for sure. And it's really X-ray, so we want to try to limit our X-ray, if as much as possible. So you can see an example of a CT. It's clear that there's a structural damage there. Such as the quick example, but majority of all concussion and TBI cases do not have something that's going to show up on a CT.
Yeah, this is a fractured skull. That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's why that shows up like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll definitely know that's there.
Yeah.
Um, um, so I just cover the reason we wouldn't necessarily want to do this if we don't have a fractured skull is, the radiation, the poor resolution, and, it's not impacting or measuring the soft tissues really at all. So MRI, Um, everybody's familiar about the MRI, but one of the key limitations is it cannot visualize that microscopic axonal damage. That is, it's almost like a frayed electrical wire end. That is microscopic in nature. MRI's resolution are really about 1 millimeter, and this is below that on a microscopic level. That's impacting the way that the brain's communicating with itself. So it's clear, there's a brain tumor here. So that is, it's going to great to pick this up. There's even people that are now doing whole body MRIs on an annual basis or on a regular checkup just to, kind of detect these types of things. But again, for a functional standpoint of the brain, it's not providing any value. So it's good for spatial resolution. It's very safe, a good contrast, and it detects the soft tissues. But the temporal resolution, again, because it's based off of blood flow, and blood flow, even though it's very fast, it's not as quick as electrical activity. That's actually showing the immediate response of how quickly our brain responds, and it is very expensive. So we don't typically recommend it. As far as a functional MRI, the image that you're seeing here is after a stroke. After 5 months, you can see the 11 months, moving in 11 months, that's showing increased blood flow into the brain. So as in the beginning, as you see, there's not much blood flow and it can start to heal. We don't know what was the case as far as what increased the blood flow to the brain with this. There was no indication on that, that image and the source. But we do know that after a stroke that we can actually have increased blood flow to the brain. And so it does measure that from a metabolic standpoint, and it's useful in certain cases. So another functional MRI is a DTI, diffusion tensor imaging, or a DSI. It measures the pathways in communications, axonal pathways, not the neurons themselves directly. So it's useful in some cases, but it's statistical and not diagnostic for individuals. And limitation for most of these imaging types is there's no training or therapy. I'll use the word therapy. We don't want to provide therapy uh, technically, but we are providing training with the neurofeedback, and we'll talk about with that with the EEG, QEEG. So there's no actual therapy you can provide with these functional MRI, and CT. They're just measuring what may be there. So it's safe, but it's indirect measurement of neuronal activity, and it's very expensive, overall. The PET, and this also goes for SPECT, SPECT. It's a good measurement of the metabolic processes, but it's based off of positive emitting radionuclides traces. So you have to have those radioactive tracers in order to be able to really get this measurement done. So here's an example of a normal brain. Sees like obviously plenty of blood flow and the functioning there. And then you can see obviously the drop down of the decreased blood flow and the decreased activity with Alzheimer's patient with a PET. So it's very useful in certain, and again, this also is similar to SPECT. The main negative part of it and downfall is a radioactive tracer, not something that I want to put in my body. It is expensive and it's very specialized. And again, also you can't actually provide any benefit to the patient with training afterwards. So this is where the MEG is another part of, this is where we start to get into the measurement of electrical activity of the brain. The previous ones are mostly on the hemodynamics of the blood flow. This is an extremely expensive device, and it's very, very, very rare, but it requires such a large amount of neurons in order to be able to detect a signal. So it's not even though it's sensitive, it's not as sensitive as EEG, and even though it does get deeper, it doesn't provide as much benefit because it's not even available for the majority of people. And you can see there's a graph here that's just showing localized epileptic spike. So it is, which you can measure in electrical activity of the brain, which you can also measure in a QEEG. And so this goes a little deeper, but the cost benefit is not even there at all because it's a very expensive, very limited, but it does have good resolution, both temporal and spatial, and goes deep into the cortex, but it's too expensive and it's not even available for most people. So this is just one of the things, as far as I mentioned briefly before, is the axonal injury. So it's a microscopic level. So it's the invisible injury that all of those other things can't measure. It can't pick up. It's a prevalent brain injury after concussion, off underlying the persistent cognitive and emotional challenges patients face. The poor sleep, the headaches that may continue on, the mood changes that occur. It's a damage that's occurred that you can't pick up, and it impairs the signal transmission because the brain can't communicate from the different cells or from the different portions, Brodmann areas of the brain or different regions of the brain to be able to
Hmm.
have the most effective communication. So it's like that, like I mentioned, kind of like that frayed electrical cable. It's not having the right communication at the right time with the right firing. So this is really why we're here to show the benefits of the QEEG.
Yes, this is my part. I guess
Yep,
this is
that's
my
all
part.
you. All you.
All me. Yeah,
Um,
so everything above that we just talked about was pretty much just looking at structure, um, which again is important, but where the real issue lies is inside of the brain electronics. Every human brain has nine distinct brainwave frequencies, and they all do certain things, and they have to be in their sweet spot, in the right zone. That's for sure. And then we can see all the networks in there. How is the brain sharing information with itself? How's the speed of that information going around your brain? This stuff is what we can find out on a QEEG, um, with super specificity and sensitivity. Um, we can see which networks are slowed, obviously, and we can also see which areas are overreactive, hyperactive, right? And if the connection is poor in the brain, and we can trace this back to, okay, this is what happens during a concussion. You get all these things. There's concussion signatures that we can see. And all these things are usually common after a concussion. So we can see that. And again, if you can see it and you can measure it, you can change it. We can actually get a real-time view of your brain on what it is doing, which is very important. Yeah, we see the amplitude, the intensity of the frequencies, those nine frequencies I was talking about, how much coupling you're talking from one network to the other is there, and what speed does it go around your brain? I mean, usually after a concussion, you see the slow wave frequencies just drop down. They just fall apart. And then your brain shares information. I'll show you a sample in a second. Your brain has to share information from one network to another, but it has to arrive at the same, without lag, at the same time it's got to arrive. And that's usually jumbled up after a concussion. And that's just stuff that does not go away on its own. Okay, this is a kid that had a concussion. His story was he was playing soccer, messed up his back, shoulder, face, head, and everything. He was 10 years old, had a bad concussion, went to his chiropractor, physical therapist, everything else. But the parents noticed that 24 hours after the injury, he couldn't sleep. He was angry. Um, he got kicked out of school afterwards for like every single day for like a month. Um, and they thought that he was he was going an A student, went down to a D student over that semester, but they thought it was maybe hormones. But they didn't. That's not something you would say. You'd probably think about that for a kid that young, but if you can see an incident where he had when he was playing soccer, that's when it all started. This is what he has. So if you look at the top row, for example, those circles, they each represent the top of your head looking down. Um, so the left column where it says delta, that's all what the delta frequency is doing in the brain, theta, and so on all the way up. But the top row from left to right should all be gray. Anything from the center to the right, if it's red, yellow, or orange, that means he's stuck in fight or flight. I saw him, he came into me a year after he went to his chiropractor, physical therapy, and then they even took him to a psychiatrist because of his attitude, mood, and everything else. That didn't work to medicate him. And then they medicated him. And this is when I got him a year after. So anything, this top row tells me he's stuck in fight or flight. The delta on the upper left, all these circles on the top row should be gray. And we use the colors to see if it's way too much, which would be red, or way too little, which would be blue. The delta frequency, the circle on the upper left, if that is red, that means that's one of his healing frequencies. So he cannot heal his brain or get out of this by himself. So he's stuck in the fight or flight mode. He's like on the edge of his seat on high alert all the time because the thalamic gate and the everything else, the gates are open to overstimulate his brain. So, when a mom said, do your homework or clean up your room, he went ballistic because he didn't have the bandwidth for that because he was in fight or flight mode all the time. So this is when we got him. This was part of his brain map. And then what we did after that is we gave him 30 sessions, and this is his brain afterwards. And in these rows down here, the amplitude asymmetry row, phase coherence row, phase lag row, that tells me how his brain is communicating with itself. How is his brain sharing information from one network to the other? Is it arriving on time or too late? In this case, it's like he went to the train station, the train left an hour ago. It's just too much stimulus for his brain to handle. And this is him after 30 sessions that we trained him. That's afterwards. So the kid's back to where he wants to be. And that was done with neurofeedback. Again, he did everything chiropractically, physical therapy, rehab wise from the neck down. Then he got medications for his moods and his attitudes. And then he went to his regular doctor. So they didn't address what happens after a concussion, which we can see what happens after a concussion. So this kid's a lot better today. Again, if you can see it, you can measure it, you can change it. So this is why the regulation lags behind the repair, right? The repair is quick. That's the soft tissue stuff, the bleeding, the swelling. If you injure or you disrupt the regulation in your brain, that takes a while to get it back. If that's changing the networks, changing the frequencies, changing the speed and the coherence and the sharing of information from one part of the brain to the other one. But once you do the neurofeedback training, and it could take 30 sessions or so, the brain tends to want to stay there. I mean, this neurofeedback is not a new thing. I mean, it's been around since the 1950s, but the technology today is you can actually pinpoint with very close specificity on where the problem arises from and how to address it. That's the beauty of that. And there's no electricity going in the brain. It's just measuring the frequencies of the brain. The operant conditioning. Yeah, it's like they put headphones on. They put on a cap similar to this with headphones. And they hear sounds at specific times. And that's another seminar on how that happens or why it happens. But it's operant conditioning. It trains your brain how to get where it needs to be frequency wise, the pathway wise, and the functionality and communication of your brain. That's the technology today where we can actually do all that stuff. But once you get the brain where it should be going, it tends to want to stay there. So if you're a chiropractor like me, it definitely helped my practice. This is where it's not going to replace what you do. It's going to complement what you do. If you wanted to use this in your practice and how and why and who it helps, we're talking about concussions here, but it helps with sleep, emotional regulation, addictions, PTSD for military or anybody with PTSD. It helps them sleep and stay higher focused on everything. That's why the race car drivers do it or the football players. Well, the football players come in because they want their concussions scrubbed out, but there's peak performance brain training as well for like CEO, C-level personnel. So yeah, I mean, if it's brain related and you want a better brain, neurofeedback can target the areas of the brain that need it and get you there. Because the neuroplasticity in action is what this is. I mean, your brain, as it gets older, it used to think it stopped growing. It didn't learn anything new. You didn't get new pathways in there. But they found out through, a bunch of research now that that actually does happen. It's kind of like a use it or lose it kind of thing. I mean, especially with the dementia or the Alzheimer's patients that I see that come in, um, put the traffic back on the highway, get it working again. And I get good results with that. I mean, this isn't the magic bullet. You're not going to get rid of or a quote, cure anything. You're going to slow things down. You can stop the progression of it. That you can do. Again, it's all about the neuroplasticity. In the default mode network, we can obviously see that on the brain map, so we know where it is. The TBI disrupts that network switch. You see how all these switches are getting, disrupted, or the doors and the gates are staying open. And again, that can all be from a minor TBI or a concussion. So we can regulate, reintegrate all the networks so it's working together the way it should be. And there's a lot of research out there on the efficacy with the brain map, the brain training, neurofeedback. There's a lot of information out there today. I mean, it's even been labeled a level 1 treatment option for kids with ADHD, which level 1 is highly effective. So again, if you can find a natural way not to medicate something, that's definitely the way to go first. There's a time and place for everything, you know. Um, yeah, is a patient fit for brain-based training? Well, I say if they had a brain, that would be yes. If they're having a struggle with that brain, I would say yes. We do have, the co long COVID protocols. If they're stressed and burnt out, if they're stuck in fight or flight mode all the time, on high alert, depression, anxiety. If you stuck in fight or flight for a long enough period of time, that automatically turns into PTSD. I don't know the time frame. I don't think anybody does, but it just does. So you can't have somebody stuck in that fight or flight mode all the time because that leads to depression, anxiety, stress, everything. Neurofeedback will not get rid of your stress. Obviously, that's part of life, but it will make it your processing stress a lot easier to deal with. So to lengthen the fuse, let's say. All right. All right, Seth, you can do this one.
Yeah, before I get into that, I just wanted to mention, one of the points that I thought of while you were talking, with sleep, as it helps with sleep, for brains as they're going through repair, just as our body when it's going through repair, detoxification is, an important aspect, and our brains actually go through a detox process when we sleep. So if we have inadequate sleep, we have inadequate deep sleep or REM sleep, our brain is actually not able to recycle, fluids and get rid of toxins that are in there, and inflammatory markers that actually could increase more neuroinflammation or go through a repair process if we don't have adequate sleep. So the neurofeedback does help with retraining and helping those networks that are the microscopic injuries that maybe, having those impacts of not firing properly or being hyper aroused or hypo aroused in a different brain activity. But if we're not able to detox the brain properly, if we're not able to, repair it because the inflammation is there because of that process, that's definitely something that is it's a indirect effect, because if it's going to help us with more sleep, it's also going to help with repair that way. Not saying you want to necessarily do this as a first treatment immediately after, like the day after a concussion, but you want to give that some time to, for inflammation to come down. But it will actually also help with, with that repair process, because it's helping with sleep, because it's helping with the detox process that does occur during that sleep, to help with further the repair. So, how this fits into chiropractic practice, we talked about chiropractic specifically. There's a lot of chiropractors that are on. There are other specialists. If I had chat that was not disabled, I would be able to, see what other practitioner types that you're on. So I apologize about that. I'm just going to, put one more poll out there for everyone to respond to, and then, when we get that back, I will, I'll proceed. But this is not, we've had a lot of success with this in, acupuncturist office as well. So it doesn't have to just be chiropractic. We just wanted to get a little bit of feedback from everybody on your potential interest level of, implementing this into the practice. All right, I appreciate everybody's responses. Thank you very much. And we are in. So that's great. I appreciate everybody responding. Then so yeah, the patient presents with concussion. Obviously, this is coming through their offices. If you are a chiropractor or any type of healthcare practitioner, you're having a patient that's had this, or they know somebody that's had this, even if it's a very mild. This is a tool to detect and mitigate when you combine it, as Dr. Kevin mentioned, this is not something that's the cure all. It's not the silver bullet. This is something that is going to add on to any other type of therapy that you're providing better recovery, faster regulation, and an additional service in your office. So next, really, we truly believe that neurofeedback is going to be well known across the US, and it's going to be implemented in all sorts of modalities. And the more available this is, the more aware people are, the greater demand there's going to be. But every time that we go through an office and talk about this with their patients and do marketing to help them increase the awareness of what neurofeedback is, what it can actually help, then it's a very simple conversation because people are looking for these answers. They're looking for non-invasive ways to actually help their brain, help themselves be optimized. And there's in my age demographic, even thinking about the future now that the research is out that Alzheimer's and dementia and things are something that we are controlling in our 40s is now I obviously want to have the best brain that I can possibly now, but I'm also thinking about how does it actually impact my longevity and vitality plan. How do I want to be when I'm 80, 90, and hopefully 100 years old, and how sharp do I want to be? So that this is a part of my strategy, and I want to have this a part of my strategy. So in a wellness care model, future of functional care, I think this is going to be, something that is going to be a staple across the country and across the world. And so, next steps, if you have want more information, if you have any specific questions about a type of case that you have or the majority of cases that you have, and see how this kind of fit into your practice, please give us a call or text. The phone number is on the screen. If you want to take a picture of that, I will send these slides as well along with the recording to you. It'll be a YouTube link that you'll be able to watch this again if you liked, if there's any parts of it that you wanted to kind of review. But we are here available to help you, with your patients, get better results, help you with your practice if you're looking to implement, even if you're just looking to, focus on a case or a couple of cases that you want to refer out. We may have a location that's opening up near you soon. So look forward to communicating and working with you. And we will have another webinar next month. It's going to be the second Wednesday of each month. So stay tuned for that. Since you're already registered for this webinar, you're going to get the notifications of being registered for that next webinar. So you'll get more information about that. What it's going to be on next month is Stress Awareness Month. So we're going to be focusing on how neurofeedback can help you manage and deal with stress, because stress is not going away, and stress is one of those factors that is linked to everything. So like we talked about last month, stress is linked to cardiovascular health. If you missed that webinar, please let me know, and we will also send you the link for that so you can watch it. It'll be a YouTube link, but I appreciate everybody for joining. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Butterfield. I appreciate your
Thank
time as
you.
well. And
I'll see you guys.
have a great night.